Tony Schick and Harry Carlisle here. Welcome to both of you. All over the newspapers, growing fears about the UK. There is a danger at this stage, isn't there, that the NHS could be quickly overwhelmed?
Yeah, as we were saying before, it is winter flu season anyway. So the worst possible thing that could happen is hundreds and hundreds of people start turning up to hospital, and if they are genuinely contagious, that's possibly the worst place you want to go, where people already are sick and vulnerable. There's quite startling numbers now tonight of as we were saying at the top there, the 14 people being tested, five have been cleared, but there are 2,000 Chinese nationals or people who've been visiting China, they're estimating, who've arrived in the UK since this outbreak. And now the race is really on overnight to start tracking these people down. And a very good place to start, as the Mail says, is 120,000 Chinese students in British universities and British schools. So it's quite, this story is now sort of hurtling towards a proper good old-fashioned crisis.
So there's the Times then, more than a dozen screenings, hundreds of cases worldwide, UK illnesses increasingly likely. That is obviously the concern, isn't it? Let's move on to the Mirror as well. Killer virus, they're saying 6 tested in Britain. Literally in the last half hour, we've had those figures that you mentioned from Public Health England, that it's 14. And the issue of Chinese students is one definitely for the authorities to look at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's astounding how quickly this epidemic has gone global. It was only on Wednesday morning that this outbreak is believed to have started in Wuhan in China. Wednesday evening, the residents of Wuhan went to bed thinking everything was normal. They woke up on Thursday morning and they found that their city was on lockdown. So China is desperately trying to quarantine people who might be affected, and yet we believe that it's potentially already in Britain. I believe it's also in 8 other countries. One thing that should be remarked upon is how quickly China has put millions of people into quarantine. This is something that's unprecedented in the history of epidemics. And we think that this comes from eating some kind of exotic meat. And of course, in China, a lot of exotic meat is considered a delicacy. It's a status symbol. And we seem to have located this outbreak to a meat market in China, where it's either potentially linked to a bat or a snake. And we know in the history of epidemics, be it SARS, be it AIDS, be it Ebola, it can come from humans eating strange and exotic animals.
Certainly the Metro is saying it's a bat.
No, there's a video.
Today some are saying it's a snake, so...
Yeah, there's a horrible video circulating on social media, which is this local delicacy, which is the bat soup, and it's not just a bat soup, it's, it's a bat in a bowl, basically. But this is extraordinary detail from the market. They've located the output, what they were selling: snakes, bats, wolf cubs, crocodiles, foxes, donkeys, rats, badgers, hedgehogs, peacocks, porcupines, and camels.
Is this the inside pages of the Mail?
The inside pages of the Mail that are showing.
See if we can get to
that are showing. They've got some really quite grim pictures from this market.
That's the front, anyway.
And if it's a phenomenal story if that is the reality of what's happened here.
Yes.
And you can see why China is so determined to clamp down on this. As we were discussing in the previous hour, the sort of slow response and the not quite truthful response to previous epidemics, particularly with SARS. Hopefully you're seeing a very different reaction. But there is that niggling doubt that this isn't the world's most open and transparent country in the world. So are we being told the whole picture? There's some suggestion perhaps this could be a lot worse than is being led on.
Well, if we are, the better news is that fewer people have died than under the SARS outbreak, and fewer medical staff are contracting this. So some people suggesting that it's not quite as virulent as SARS. Nonetheless, 17, 18 people have now lost their lives in the Wuhan province area as well. Complaints here that thermal screening around the world in many nations, all we get is a leaflet. The difficulty, of course, is that the incubation period could be up to 5 days, in which case you are infectious before you present with symptoms like a temperature, for example. So it's very easy for you to be transmitting the illness already, isn't it?
And I think that it's just too early to know. Experts don't know how long the incubation period is. We actually don't know with certainty what the figures are from China, although the reported figure is that 18 people have died. The crackdown in terms of how quickly these cities have been quarantined suggests that they're taking it very, very seriously. There's some reports of expats who are living in some of these cities saying, well, overnight, guards were at every station not allowing people to go out, so that again suggests it must be quite bad. It's just too early, I think, to be able to make any medical assessment in terms of how quickly this spreads, what the incubation period is, and how widespread it is.
And it's cold and flu season. You know, there's illnesses all over the place for everybody, aren't there? In the northern hemisphere, at least, it's very difficult for the health authorities to deal with this. Certainly. Should we go to the other? Well, let's see the metro as well. Killer virus. UK patients in isolation. And again, the same really dramatic picture we saw on the inside pages of the Mail there. A patient feared to have the virus transported to a Hong Kong hospital. I think, is it 2 confirmed cases in Hong Kong so far? But that, obviously, the figures change all the time. And yes, on the inside pages, you mentioned that universities are on alert. So that's the really tricky bit, isn't it? Anyway, the other main story on
with China, another big story today is that the government looks finally, after months and years of dithering about what to do about our 5G connectivity. At the moment, we have 4G. This is the next generation of super fast broadband, all basically brought into light by Boris Johnson's pledge to have everyone in the country connected by 2035 as front and centre for his manifesto. Now, the only people that are currently able to provide that are the Chinese-linked firm Huawei, who have been accused of all sorts of shenanigans and spying and espionage, which they deny. But there is no doubt that the Americans and our allies are concerned about Huawei. Not necessarily concerned about us, because we have, you know, world-leading security services. GCHQ have already got a special unit designed to spy on the supposed spies, who are designed to monitor Huawei. But it's whether Britain allowing Huawei into our core infrastructure to basically build our future networks, whether that would be a sign for the rest of the world that actually it's all fine. So big old-fashioned row brewing the world. Donald Trump's obviously said no.
As we see from the Mail.
It's going to personally plead. But what we have here is not quite Love Actually moment yet. But Boris Johnson has his tenure so far as Prime Minister, especially since the election, has very much been to keep his distance a little bit with Donald Trump. We saw it on Iran.
I thought you were going to say with all of us.
No, absolutely. On Iran, you know, he was very clear to his cabinet and very clear to his government that yes, we are very close allies and friends with America, but we're not going to be dragged into their conflicts. And this again is seen to be seen for so much how Labour made the campaign about his he's just Donald Trump's poodle. Actually, it looks like we're going to tell the Americans to do.
Okay, so if Mr. Trump does indeed personally ask the Prime Minister to axe the Huawei deal, and we know he bears grudges and takes fits of pique quite easily, Mr. Trump, what will the implications be for that in the post-Brexit Britain that we're about to enter?
Well, obviously, it's going to strain relationships. We've already seen a bit of a tit-for-tat when it comes to the supposed bumper deal that the UK is going to strike with the US in the post-Brexit world. I think the reality of that is going to become abundantly clear very quickly. It's hard to negotiate trade deals, and if you do them very quickly, then you're probably going to lack on the actual substance. But just to go back to Huawei for a second, this is purportedly a private telecoms company, a company that is the best in the world at providing 5G infrastructure. It's come out of nowhere in the last 10 years and gone stratospheric. It has obviously got ties to the Chinese state. So it is, when security concerns are raised that this might be a backdoor way for the Chinese to spy on the United Kingdom, I think those security concerns have to be taken very, very seriously.
Okay. I just want to pack in Brexit very quickly, which seems extraordinary in itself, doesn't it, really? But anyway, Queen backs Brexit, or does that just mean we've got the royal assent for Brexit? Is that what that
means? The Queen has signed the act into, after all that, it just took
the divorce, to be
fair. The divorce. After all of that, it took a quick flick of the pen and an 80-seat majority. It turns out it's actually quite easy.
I know.
It was extraordinary. Imagine the hours we spent discussing Brexit.
3 full years of our life, we're never going to get back.
The hours we've been on here talking about it, and you just think, that's it, that's that. It's done. It's done.
Yeah, well, Daily Express, always a fan, as we know. A trade deal with the US by the end of this year. Queen gives royal assent to our EU exit. At least one paper's mocking it.
Well, what I would say is actually the trade deal with the US and the Huawei stuff we were just talking about then.
Yes.
There's only one politician now with an election this year, and that's Donald Trump. And if he wants to be seen as this global statesman that he's very keen to play up, he needs to be seen to be doing a deal. So I think we've got a little bit of leeway with the Americans to be able to tell them to, back off.
We will see. We will see. Plenty of discussions on trade after Jan the 31st, of course. Coming up, the spiralling cost of HS2, that and more after this. this evening, the political consultant, Nina Schick, and the deputy political editor of the Mail on Sunday, Harry Cole. Welcome back to both of you. A story we've heard before in some respects about HS2, late and billions over budget, but this is the report now that finds it's due to Tory failures. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think that's a bit cheeky, The Guardian, to be honest, because this has been a bit of an ongoing saga over various governments. When MPs were originally asked to vote on this project, it was told the costs were a fraction of what they are now. Now, the National Audit Office have piled in today, not an organisation known to mince its words, and they've said, you know, like all great British infrastructure, especially anything to do with trains, it's going to be late. It's not on time, and it's very, very expensive. Nothing can sum up British trains more than late and very, very expensive.
Yes.
Again, it falls into a bit of the Harway category. This has been a rumbling row for a long time. There's been concerns about HS2 for a long time. But actually, the Prime Minister's in tray is starting to heave now. And this is a decision he really needs. We need to start actually building it. It's costing £250 million a month. And I just get a little bit of a feeling there's a bit of a pitch rolling exercise going on.
But is there a tipping point for how much you've spent compared with how far you've got to go? I mean, this story says total cost unknown, doesn't it, in the Times? But
we've already spent £9 billion. Okay. That would just go up in the air if we do scrap it. But the cost, you know, it's turning into a bit of a blank check.
I mean, the costs have been spiraling. The original estimate was 32 billion. Then it was revised up to 56. Then it's now standing at 88. And now the Times also reports that it could potentially be over 100 billion. So if you think about the boost that this is purportedly going to give to the economy, by the Department of Transport's own estimates, for every ATP that this gives to the economy, it's going to cost the government £1. So it already looks like a big loss-making venture. And of course, it'd be interesting to see where Boris goes with this. He's promised to give the voters in the north something.
Yeah, well, how better to spend that money, either on this giant railway, or could actually that 80 billion you've got left over be ploughed into interconnectivity in the north in other ways. So
okay, let's go to the internet or the airwaves. Well, I say that actually because it's WhatsApp, isn't it, I guess? But this is the Jeff Bezos versus the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia story, which you want to take on.
Astounding. So the richest man on earth, Jeff Bezos, his phone was apparently hacked by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who he was getting quite cozy with last, maybe 2 years ago. This was, of course, before the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Astounding geopolitical stuff going on here. But aside from that, I mean, for all of our viewers, I think the point to take from that, if Jeff Bezos' phone can be hacked, yours can be too.
Well, not
that
just
led to
ours.
questions, did it not, about the Prime Minister?
We've been having a back and forth with the government on, how often is Boris Johnson been in contact with MBS? When he was Foreign Secretary, Mr. Johnson, he acquired quite a reputation for liberally dishing out his mobile number to other world leaders and world figures. And actually, when there was a bit of harumphing from officials when he became Prime Minister, that people like President Macron just called him on his mobile rather than going through the official channels. And they've been a little bit cagey on the record. There's, we never discuss security matters. The Prime Minister's communications are, never discussed. I mean, the guidance we're getting is that they're not worried. But you've got to wonder, what... It's that tiny little lid being lifted on the world behind the scenes. Actually, you've got
Harry,
world leaders WhatsApping. Oh no, sorry.